All right, cool. Welcome everybody to the 5 Gyres Ambassador call around Break Free from Plastic, hosted by the Post Landfill Action Network. During this session, we're going to talk a little bit about who PLAN is. Post Landfill Action Network, PLAN is our acronym. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the support that we offer to college campuses across the country. But really the bulk of this session is I want to talk about our Break Free from Plastic campus pledge. What kinds of work are we doing to grow the campus movement to break free from the hold of single-use disposable plastic? And then I'm also going to talk about a couple of strategies for organizing on campus. So we're going to jump right in. So the Post Landfill Action Network, we are a national nonprofit, and this is our mission statement here. So PLAN cultivates, educates, and inspires the student-led zero waste movement. This is our staff, including our interns from last summer. We do an internship project every summer. This summer, we're actually taking a pause on that, but we are hiring, and I'll do a little pitch for that right at the end. We currently work across the country with over 200 campuses, as I said, in 42 states, so we've almost hit them all. And we're starting to work internationally right now. So we have campuses in Canada, Japan, Ireland, Australia, and Brazil. And so during the course of this session, if you want to get distracted by your social media for a second, I totally understand, I've been there. And feel free while you're on there to give us a follow. We are at Post Landfill on all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also Snapchat, if anyone still uses Snapchat. And that's my email address, faye@postlandfill.org. So feel free to connect with me that way. So where did PLAN come from? What is our story? As I said, we are national. You kind of saw a little bit about our scope, but we didn't start that way. We started basically in that image on that top left. So I'm sure a lot of folks have seen that image on a college campus during move-out season. It's so common. Dumpsters overflowing with usable material that students cannot take with them. They're traveling across country, they're traveling sometimes to other countries to go home for the summer, and they have to leave a ton of stuff behind. So in 2011, students at the University of New Hampshire saw this problem, and they decided to collect those items and start a program called Trash to Treasure. They stored those items over the summer. They tested them, they cleaned them, they priced them, and then during move-in season, they held a massive move-in yard sale. This program, in its first year, made more than it cost to run, becoming the first student-led self-sustaining program of its kind in the country. The program still runs today, and PLAN currently works with more than 40 campuses running similar programs. And we help to support them in their program growth, but that's just one of the types of programs that we work with. With the campuses that we work with, we support them on a whole variety of projects. This is kind of the core of how we support campuses. We provide leadership skills through workshops and leadership certifications, all digital. We provide movement building access as access to our conference, access to our movement partners, 5 Gyres being one of our movement partners. And we also provide project support through manuals, one-on-one advisings, and discounts. I'm going to cover each of these really, really quickly. The session isn't a PLAN membership pitch, but just for you all who might be interested. This is what our leadership trainings look like. We hold at least 5 every single month. The green ones are our core leadership trainings. They are what we consider to be kind of the basic curriculum for students making change on their campus. We talk about everything from holding a successful meeting to building power on your campus and understanding your campus hierarchy and navigating it and using mapping tools. And then the pink sessions are project specific, and those rotate every single month to different topics. Sometimes they're on move out, sometimes they're on plastic. This coming month in March, we have move out textile waste with a movement partner, and tips for effective campus tabling. If you complete all 3 of our leadership certification trainings, as well as 4 kind of other trainings of your choice, you become Plan Leadership Certified, and we send you a sweet little care package. These are some, not all, of our resources. Each of these are the cover page for a manual that spans over 70 pages. It covers best practices for different decisions for a project, how to start anything from plastic-free to food recovery to a waste audit to a campus thrift store. It also has sample documents, sample budgets, sample timelines that you can download and you can share with your campus. These are just some of our discounts. We work with companies that we highly vet and provide discounts for students to be able to purchase products for their programming that are sustainable, and they are not kind of restricted by the increased cost of sustainable products. That is our goal, and member campuses have access to all of these discounts. Okay, flew through that. If anyone has questions about membership, always feel free to reach out to me. I want to spend the rest of this session talking about Break Free from Plastic. Many folks might be familiar with what Break Free from Plastic is. It is actually an international movement far beyond just Plan that is made up of a coalition of organizers and nonprofits and organizations and community organizations that are working to build a global movement envisioning a future free from plastic pollution. Shortened to BFFP, Break Free from Plastic, this organization does a lot of fantastic work. Plan is a member of this coalition. This is their platform. It's called the Tagaytay strategy. Break Free from Plastic was kind of envisioned, was founded in the Philippines. And this is their basic kind of platform for change. And there's a lot of content or a lot of text on here. Feel free to come back and reference this slide. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. The way that Plan has plugged into Break Free from Plastic has been through a campus pledge. So we've built a Break Free from Plastic campus pledge because we see campuses and cities and countries even starting to make commitments to leave single-use disposable plastic behind. And that's great. That is really exciting that there are all these commitments being made. But what we've been noticing about these commitments is that they are generally toothless. They often do not have a date. They often do not have kind of a clear next step for what actually getting to plastic free might look like. So inspired by all of that, we have created a Break Free from Plastic campus pledge that campuses can sign on to commit their campus to working towards kind of long-term change. The pledge is made up of a couple of kind of levels of commitment that I'm going to jump into now. So the overall goal, sorry, before I get into the levels of commitment, the overall goal of the pledge is to eliminate campus and campus food, or it eliminates campus and campus food vendor procurement of all non-essential, non-compostable, single-use disposable plastic. And those two caveats are really, really important, non-essential and non-compostable. And what that means is non-essential plastic is that we're talking about, actually I'm gonna go back real quick. Non-essential plastic is we're talking about plastic that is not medically based. We're talking about plastic that is not the plastic that goes into making our laptops and our cell phones. And we want to move towards a place where those are not things that we rely on. But with this pledge, we want this to be a concrete starting point where campuses can commit to long-term change. So then we include non-compostable plastic, but we actually have a caveat to that because we want to make sure that campuses aren't leaning on compostable plastic that isn't getting processed correctly. So we include a couple caveats there that I'll talk about a little bit later on. So one other kind of caveat that this pledge includes is that it excludes recyclable plastics. So we want campuses to be able to make this commitment in a way that will make a really concrete change. And while we know that, especially now, recycling is not the most viable option for fixing this problem, we really want to target the heavy problem plastics, the single-use disposable plastics that are going to landfills and incinerators. So recycling can potentially be used as an excuse of saying we don't need to get rid of this plastic because it's being recycled. And we're kind of addressing that in our second point in the pledge, not in our first. So some of the prohibited items that we do require campuses to get rid of in their signing of the Break Free from Plastic Campus Pledge are plastic utensils, straws and stirrers, plastic clamshells and to-go containers, all styrofoam food service products, plastic shopping bags, and that's just to name a few. Those are just kind of examples. So the accessibility point that I mentioned early on is we want to make sure that by getting rid of those plastic, those single-use disposable plastic items that I just mentioned, that we're not making it more difficult for individuals on campus to have access to things that they need for health, disability, financial, diet reasons. So the pledge includes a caveat that says implemented policies should restrict disposable products while accommodating all users of the system, including people with disabilities, dietary restrictions, financial limitations, or other needs. A variety of voices should be included at the decision-making table to consider diverse needs and limitations. So in the signing of the pledge, we suggest that the process is facilitated with the inclusion of folks who might have particular needs on campus. That can make it so that your commitment to breaking free from plastic is not making it harder or making it impossible for some individuals on your campus to engage in this work. We want it to be inclusive solution building. And a couple other points on accessibility. When building out this pledge, you'll note that all restrictions have built-in exceptions. So, and those have to be worked around with individuals who it directly impacts. And so below, the 3 bullet points below are naming groups, individuals who will be important to have kind of at the decision-making table. Impacted students, staff, and faculty, folks with disabilities or a disability accessibility services office, low-income students, first-generation students. If your campus has a food pantry, you're going to want to include folks who are making use of that food pantry so you don't kind of restrict access to their source of food. So these are some of the alternatives that we mention. You want to make sure to include pre-packaged plastic. Sorry, context for this slide. So what I listed off a couple slides ago of the items that have to be excluded, those are in like the first section of the pledge. There are 3 sections. That first section of the pledge is, these are the things that you need to get rid of. Work with these groups to get rid of them. This is bringing us into the second section of the pledge. The second section of the pledge basically says, these are items that you need to get rid of that are going to take a little bit longer, that you're going to need to build institutionalized alternatives to. These are the things that are going to be harder, basically, is what we're saying here. So some of the things that we feel like are going to take a little bit more time, a little bit more care, a little bit more thought to have strong alternatives for are prepackaged plastic wrapped retail items. So water bottles, bags of chips, anything in a vending machine, basically. Items that might be a source of food for folks who are studying really late in the library. You're going to have kind of a stronger, you can't just get rid of these things. Plastic trash and recycling bags, so liners of your bins. Again, you can't just get rid of those things. You have to find a viable alternative. Plastic wrap used for food prep, plastic packaging for orders, academic plastic, so lab gear, and single-use plastics necessary for health and safety purposes. This is like this, excuse me, sorry?
Oh, sorry, I just unmuted myself. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I have a question, because this is really interesting to me. Because you're right, some of these things are so much larger. And do you provide viable alternatives or examples of things that have worked? You know, this brings to mind, we were just talking with someone at UCLA, and she, you know, mentioned that she has these really amazing plans, but she also has a hospital. And how do you marry those two things? So anyway, I'd love to hear a little bit more about this, because these are some of these bigger things that people have more resistance to than some of like the easier single-use items. So this is awesome that you guys have it in kind of stages and phases.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks who have joined late, feel free to interrupt me at any point. Take yourself off mute, ask a question. I'd love to hear from you all. So to address your question, Melissa, we have a series of resources on our Break Free from Plastic Campus Pledge Toolkit page that covers a lot of these hard to replace items. In full transparency, we don't have answers to every single one of these, and the factors that each campus or community is weighing, cost, accessibility, use, purpose, are going to be different. So we have some solutions listed, and really what we're hoping to do with this pledge, with having kind of a unified movement of campuses working towards breaking free from plastic, is to be able to connect some of these really unique solutions with each other. So if one campus figures out how to solve the problem of, for example, like plastic, like bottle toppers in a lab, if one campus figures out that they can use an alternative material, no other campus should be trying to reinvent the wheel on that. We should be able to kind of share within that. So that's one of the goals of this pledge, is to be able to say that solutions should be shared across campuses, and the campuses that are working on different parts of this pledge can kind of connect over that. One good example here, and I love examples of solutions, so I'm not going to pass up this opportunity, is the University of Oregon actually has a solution to single-use plastic trash and recycling bags. They actually have multi-use trash and recycling bags, and they have a whole system set up for that. And their bags are still plastic, but they're a woven plastic that continues to be used over and over again. So it's a step in the right direction. And those are the kind of things that can be replicated.
Awesome.
So getting this pledge signed, moving your campus away from plastic, kind of getting rid of all of the items that I mentioned and coming up with the solutions, not an easy task, not a really straightforward path to success. I wish there was a silver bullet. I wish there was a clear roadway to a plastic-free campus, but there truly is not. And a lot of what we're trying to do with the Break Free from Plastic Campus Pledge is create, as I mentioned, is create a community around this solution building. And one thing that we at Plan are really, really cautious and aware of in our solutions building is that something that works on one campus or in one community might not be viable for another campus, or might be totally ridiculous in another community. So there's lots of different change-making approaches, even when it comes to signing a pledge, or even when it comes to getting your campus to quote unquote break free from plastic. So I'm going to cover two basically change-making approaches is what we call them. So the first is top-down. And this is really what we're going for with releasing this pledge. And this is kind of when a campus releases a zero waste goal, they're going for a top-down approach typically. So saying that like the president has signed on, and thus everyone else has to figure out how to make it happen. And they have a certain year, they have a certain timeline, and so everyone is kind of working in that direction. A campus commitment has been made. And the thing that that does is it creates an authority to this commitment. This commitment gains the ability to kind of mandate this has to happen because we have to reach this goal. And there's a couple of strategies to kind of get yourself to a place where you can, or get your campus to a place where you can create a top-down impact. And the first is build up a community, make friends. And we hold an entire training on what this slide is covering. So there's a lot more here. I'm just glossing the surface with this. But in building that kind of top-down approach, the first thing that you need to do is identify who is that top-down individual. Who's the decision maker? Whose mind do you need to change to be able to make your thing happen? Who can be the person that can mandate that you need to go plastic free? And once you identify who that person is, then you go back to your roots. You gather information, you gather evidence of community support, which can be petitions, it can be events, it can be a student government mandate, whatever it is to show that you've got the people behind you, you've got kind of the voice of your community. And then armed with that information, you can approach the change maker, you can approach that decision maker. So that's tactic number one. Tactic number two is a little bit baked into tactic number one, but can also be standalone, which is building a public campaign, building pressure, building escalation. So getting your community to say, we want this. And so that the decision maker hears, my community wants this. And the ways that you do that are through petitioning, education, getting kind of large entities on your side, student government, the student population, to show that you have a well-informed kind of group at your back. So we have a couple of tools for this. As I kind of mentioned, we have trainings. The tools are digital leadership trainings that plan members can take advantage of them for free. Non-members are welcome to pay a small amount to attend any of these digital trainings. They cover the Navigating Your Campus Community training is the one that is a really focused on how to identify a change maker and rally community support around changing that change maker's mind or just getting them on your side. So then there's approach number two, tactic number two. Tactic number two is the tipping point. So as opposed to going from top down and getting someone to sign the pledge and then working to make all the pieces fit to fulfill the pledge, the tipping point starts with all the pieces first. It's about getting kind of proof of concept, basically. Building out a water bottle ban, a alternative to plastic utensils, getting rid of plastic bags in your campus bookstore, kind of building out all of these kind of little commitments so that when you actually make the ask to sign the pledge, you're not saying, we have to sign this pledge and then we have to do X, Y, Z, Q, W, but you're saying we should sign this pledge and we've already done 5 of the things that are on this pledge. So it's so much easier. And that builds out a really strong leverage. It makes it much, much harder for decision makers to say, no, we don't want to do this. Oh, and one note here is that we have the full pledge is available on our website, but we also have provided a modifiable pledge. If you feel like there's absolutely no way that your community is going to do a piece of this, but you really, really want some kind of commitment, we welcome people to take that language and kind of move stuff around if need be, change it if need be, to fit their needs. When possible, I really, really encourage campuses to shoot for the stars and go for a full commitment if you can, but understanding that that isn't always possible. So when you're working with this kind of all of the pieces first approach, when you're thinking about what kinds of projects to approach, got some chat. Oh, awesome. When you're thinking about all of the projects to approach, think about projects that fulfill the following kind of 3 categories, because these are going to make them easy wins, and then you'll have the wins on your side. So the first is your project achievable on your campus? And then the second is, does it reduce or eliminate a targeted plastic item? Pretty straightforward. Is it kind of in line with what the pledge is trying to do overall? And is there popular support for this kind of project? Is there already a conversation? Is there already a movement around this item? Maybe your campus already has a really popular conversation around getting rid of plastic utensils. And you have a composting project and you have the funding to switch to compostable utensils. That would be a great project. So I see we have a couple of comments coming in the chat box. I'm just going to check on these. Awesome, cool. Cool, so no questions, but really good comments. Feel free to keep commenting in the chat box. I'll check on them every couple of slides. So when you start to build out the project, that has to be kind of obviously your first step. Create a strategy, create a plan. Sounds really easy, sounds really straightforward to just do it. But it can be really complicated, especially on a college campus. For anyone who has tried to get your campus or your community to get rid of plastic bags or plastic utensils, it's really important to make sure that you kind of have the right support. So are you working through a beverage contract? Are you dealing with dining? And plan can absolutely help with navigating all of that. We have a resource that I'm going to mention towards the end of this session. That will hopefully provide kind of a baseline to be able to jump into any of these projects. Once you have built out a project, some of the things to make sure that you're doing are tracking. Tracking is so important on a college campus. Being able to track and report your impact can help you make the argument for larger change further along. So if you're able to say, we used to buy 2,000 plastic cups every year, now, or every month even, that would be a very small campus to buy 2,000 every year, every month. And now as a campus, we're only purchasing 1,000 every year, once a year. And that's just for this one event. So that actually not only does it track and show your impact, but it also pinpoints the areas that still need to change. It helps you identify, we've gone this far and we still have this far to go. And then you can have diversion or aversion metrics from the project, which can contribute to your campus's diversion rate, which is a nice way to kind of give to the overall zero waste tracking of your campus. And then again, if you're using these small projects to leverage a bigger commitment, you always want to have that overall decision maker identified and use the small project victories to kind of show examples, to show that you have won X amount of times and that you can still win with the pledge. So keep the decision maker in the loop, even if they're not necessarily on your side. Make sure to tell them when you've won. I'm just going to check on this comment real quick. Cool. All right, so these are a couple of tools for making the smaller project change and not necessarily working from the top down. We have a couple of manuals and trainings that are relevant. We actually have a plastic-free manual that is available on our website. It covers all different kinds of alternatives to single-use disposable plastic. It covers case studies of campuses who have worked on these kinds of projects. It talks about pros and cons of different decisions. It talks about positive versus negative behavior reinforcement. It has a lot of different resources. We also have a manual on to-go containers. It's pretty common on a college campus for students to be ridiculously busy and not have time to stop and eat. And while we don't necessarily condone not having time to stop and eat, we know it's going to happen. And campuses are building out systems so that students can use reusable containers instead of having to get a plastic or a styrofoam container every time that gets thrown away. We have a food recovery and composting manual that also talks about building out strong composting programs and how to avoid some of the common pitfalls in composting, making sure that your campus isn't spending extra money on compostable products and then not actually composting them accurately. And then we have a zero waste events manual, talking about all the little pieces, how to run a zero waste event. And everything that you see listed on this page here, or on this slide here, are the resources on the Break Free from Plastic Toolkit page. In addition to the Plastic Free Campus Manual, we have a template Senate resolution that can be used to get your student government to pass support for the pledge. We have the modifiable pledge, which I mentioned, the manual, which I mentioned, the to-go container guide, which I mentioned, a plastic audits template. So this is a spreadsheet that we've built out with all of the categories that you would need to run a plastic audit on your campus. And it includes 3 different kinds of audits even, a visual audit, a kind of hands-in audit where you actually go into the trash and sort through it, and a procurement audit where you go through campus and start to understand what plastic items is your campus even purchasing? What is the scope of plastic use on campus? Most of these resources are, oh, and there's also the swag hierarchy, which is on the next slide, so I'm gonna wait to talk about it. But most of these items are actually also, we're translating them into Spanish, so they'll be available in Spanish, hopefully by the end of the summer. I'm gonna take a second to look at some comments real quick. Give an update on the to-go box reusable container model in school campuses. Yeah, of course. Yes, and shout out to the Zero Waste Use USA event in Oakland. That's a really great point. Those events are really fantastic. Saturday, March 16th. I've been several times, highly suggested. So an update on the to-go box project. Oop, sneak peek. The to-go box project, a lot of campuses actually have this in place already, and they build out systems for supporting the kind of exchange of reusable to-go boxes. And those systems can look very different depending on the infrastructure of the campus. So a really common system is when a campus arrives at the dining hall, they can swipe their card. It'll charge them usually around like $5, a little over the cost of the to-go box. They will basically check out a box that will be given to them. And then they can go through the campus buffet, go through the dining hall buffet, fill it up with whatever they want, leave with it. And then when they bring it back, some campuses require it to be cleaned, some campuses do not. They can swipe their card again, and they receive that $5 deposit back into their account. And that's a good way to financially kind of cover your butt in case that student doesn't bring that container back. So the cost is covered. They're basically buying it and then returning it. Our to-go container guide covers, I think it's 5 case studies that are in there of different campuses who have slightly different to-go container programs. And it talks a little bit about each of the components of their programs and why it fits specifically for that campus, so that any student looking at that can figure out whether or not that really applies to their campus and how it could. So moving on to talk about the swag hierarchy. So this is a conversation that we are trying to push on college campuses that is connected to Break Free from Plastic ideologically, in which we are recognizing that college campuses give out a ton of free stuff. And a lot of that free stuff is, for lack of a better word, crap. It is foam stress balls, it's terrible frisbees, it's t-shirts that can only be worn a couple of times, or t-shirts that are very ugly and don't want to be worn multiple times, with logos on them, with branding. And we are trying to push changing the swag system. So if people don't know what swag means or swag stand for, it actually stands for stuff we all get. And this is the swag hierarchy that we have recently developed. It is an ethical guide to swag, and it starts by saying, if you have to buy, or it starts we'll start all the way at the bottom where it's orange. And we're basically saying, like, do not give out useless or questionable items. Don't give out fidget spinners. Don't give out foam stress balls. Don't give out tiny frisbees. Avoid the useless stuff. And then going up to maybe also don't give out carabiners or pens, but it's a little bit better. They're useful. And we kind of split it into, like, right under stuff that you definitely shouldn't give out, or right above stuff that you definitely shouldn't give out, is stuff that is either useful, pens, carabiners, or ethical, a really well-made t-shirt with made of recycled material or made of organic cotton. And then above that even is give out something that is both useful and ethical. So a insulated coffee thermos made by an ethical company. And then, and that's if you have to buy new. What we suggest is in the blue section, if you're gonna give stuff out, give out stuff that is upcycled or reused, or don't give out stuff at all. Avoid the stuff. Give out experiences, a photo, tickets to something, food, or a service, a repair service. So the hierarchical ethical guide to swag is a way of kind of navigating this questionable world. So I'm wrapping up, and I want to leave like 5 minutes. Looks like we'll actually even have more than 5 minutes for questions. This is the URL link on our website for the Break Free from Plastic Campus Pledge. On that page is the toolkit with all of the resources that I mentioned. And from that page, you can also find lots of other information about Plan and the work that we do. Our theory of change is rooted in the idea that no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So whether it is doing that top-down approach or doing a small solution by small solution to be able to get a big resolution, whatever it is, that's important. And together, if we're all doing that work, we can fix the system. That is our kind of theory as an organization. Feel free to reach out to us. We have, as I mentioned, internships. Have your campus become a member, or a campus in your community, send them to become a member. Find us on the road. We tour, we go on events, find our Plan van on the road and connect with us that way. A couple other just quick plugs is we hold an annual Students for Zero Waste conference every year. 600 students, totally zero waste event. Last year was in Philadelphia. This year is also going to be in Philly. We are releasing the date in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. We'd love to have everyone there. It is a blast. And we are also hiring right now. We're hiring for 3 full-time positions to work on our team. And we also have 1 internship position open. So you can find that information on our website. You can also shoot me an email and I can help connect you. Thank you all so much for coming. I will hang out for some questions.
Thanks so much, Faye. That was awesome. I would love to know about the how you guys are doing some international reach as well. Do you have plans to kind of go to other countries as well, or you're kind of starting out with those? That's super cool that y'all are expanding.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a funny story. I like to say that we are accidentally international. We are not, we don't have major plans to expand across the world right now. We're only a 5-year-old organization, so we still have a lot of base building to do here in the US. The reason that we do have international campuses is because we find that our resources are applicable and they are able to support students on campuses across the world. So we will not turn anyone away that we can support. But right now we don't have a long-term plan for moving around the world. Maybe ask me in 3 years and maybe we will.
Sounds good. I also just wanted to ask, what have, as you've been working with students on this Break Free from Plastic pledge, what have you seen has kind of been the kind of recipe that they need for success? I imagine, I know you covered some of that, like with the reaching out to other groups and building that support and seeing what would be feasible. But I'm just curious if there's like that one thing that's like, you really need this, and what has been kind of the biggest challenge and how they've been able to overcome that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So to give a little bit more background on the pledge, we just recently launched this pledge. It actually just launched this fall. And we're still kind of in the starting stages. We're actually looking to hopefully eventually hire a full-time campaign coordinator to support campuses in implementing this pledge. So right now we're in the very baby stages of supporting campuses in this work. But from my experience so far, I would say that the absolute most important thing is to have a group of students who are willing to fight. And whatever that fight looks like, it can be really challenging. It can be a lot of administrative runaround, or it could be building solutions and creating alternatives and kind of working with different departments to prove that it's possible. But having a committed group, really of students, it's got to be students, where this energy is based. That's the most important piece.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, feel free to connect with me at any point. My email address is on the slide. And I thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to touch base with many of you in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Faye, and thanks everyone for hopping on.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you for 5 Gyres for hosting me.
Yeah, of course.
Eternal thanks to you all. You're fantastic. Love working with you.
Happy to do it. All right, everybody. Thanks. Hopes everyone has a great day.
All right. Bye.